Gotta go.
Hey, guy, you're the first serious gamer I've seen all morning. Check this out. Brand new 16-bit Super Nintendo with Super Mario World. Wow!
Oh, what's this one?
Oh, this is a Sonic the Hedgehog from Sega Genesis. Hey, look at these radical colors, huh?
AAA game publishers have always chased the success of the industry's latest trends, a phenomenon that inspired the creation of an exorbitant number of Grand Theft Auto clones throughout the 6th and 7th console generations. On occasion, such thinking has borne good fruit, evidenced in PUBG's quick claim to fame influencing everything from Fortnite Battle Royale to Call of Duty Warzone. But on the flip side, pursuing popular trends runs the risk of stifling creativity and alienating players, a recipe for disaster that has taken many once ambitious endeavors to an early grave. This, Square Enix learned the hard way upon publishing Babylon's Fall. The online-only adventure from Bayonetta creator PlatinumGames marked one of Square Enix's many attempts to broaden its reach in the live service space, whose persistent revenue streams has significantly boosted many a company's bottom line. While Babylon's Fall seemed to feature the hallmarks of a quality service game with its proven development team and compelling gameplay mechanics, it launched with few redeeming qualities, resulting in catastrophic review scores and a rapidly dwindling player base. Platinum maintained focus throughout the rough start, deploying and developing new content for what should have been a lengthy life cycle for Babylon's Fall on PC and PlayStation. To cut its losses, Square Enix pulled the plug far earlier than anticipated, robbing developers of any chance to salvage the project. Thus, what began as Platinum bringing its signature style to the burgeoning games-as-a-service model concluded with what may go down as one of the studio's least memorable outings. This is the tragedy of Babylon's Fall.
皆さんこんばんは。本日はスクエアエニックスプロデュースプラチナゲームズ開発による完全新規アクション RPG バビロンズフォールについての最新
Square Enix producer Junichi Ihara had long dreamed of producing a new hack-and-slash adventure. It was simply a matter of selling his vision to the best development partner. Other teams were under consideration, yet PlatinumGames' genre-defining Nier Automata convinced Ihara and fellow Square Enix producer Yosuke Saito that no one else would better fit the bill. The endeavor centered on a multiplayer online RPG with hack-and-slash mechanics. On top of a desire to expand upon Nier Automata's action gameplay, the publisher put forth one other simple request for the developer: create a high fantasy setting. Tackling the desired setting and gameplay style wouldn't prove a problem for the Osaka-based outfit. However, in a developer featurette, director Kenji Saito likened the stipulated online component to development on hard mode. Either way, Platinum accepted the challenge after shipping Nier Automata, then spent 4+ years crafting the world of Babylon's Fall. Though there were inclinations to follow the path of traditional hack-and-slash experiences, experimenting with the formula seemed ideal in some cases. For example, lead game designer Isao Negishi noted such games typically allowed users to build characters by combining weapons, armor, and skills. Babylon's Fall instead boasted battle actions that activated certain abilities to draw out the player character's strongest powers, thereby opening the door for builds structured around evading attacks with pinpoint timing and the like. The gameplay itself changed in accordance with these player-driven preferences, hopefully creating a level of depth rivaling Platinum's previous action titles. Combat tools similarly received careful thought. Speaking to Famitsu post-launch, Negishi divulged the original intention of equipping players with 4 weapons to switch in rotation. Finding this setup too limiting, developers implemented a system wherein 2 weapons were equipped to both hands. Ensuring users could mix and match to reflect their preferred playstyles further elevated the breadth of gameplay possibilities. Attaching a pair of swords on one hand and 2 staffs on the other served as but one option, while affixing hammers on all 4 slots constituted another. It seemed Platinum had little trouble melding its trademark gameplay ethos with the hack-and-slash genre. But Square Enix's request for a high fantasy backdrop demanded a different set of eyes, particularly with respect to the visual style that would set the tone and tenor of Babylon's Fall.
I've got high hopes for you.
Classical European oil paintings provided the source of inspiration behind the project's visual language. Square Enix and Platinum thus sought an artist capable of rendering their fantasy world through a deeply layered lens, hence the hiring of Koji Tajima. The companies considered Tajima a perfect fit for the character designer role, though his credentials were predominantly comprised of live-action films such as Terminator Dark Fate and Blade Runner 2049. According to Tajima, fantasy suited his personal style enough to make the transition between the film and interactive mediums smoother. In minding the high fantasy motif, along with the developer and publisher's instructions to keep the designs polished and sophisticated, the artist steered clear of cartoonish styles. The result was art that complemented Babylon's Fall's oil painting-inspired brushwork style, achieved through a technique developed specifically for the Platinum title. The studio outsourced talent for the storytelling too, partnering with Final Fantasy XI online scenario writer Kenichi Iwao, who focused on weaving a tale in which the protagonist felt forced into unfolding events, their skill level running in tandem with the narrative. As such, Iwao's scenario positioned the player as prisoner to a nation warring with a formidable empire. The story worked such that after reluctantly joining the war for their captors, the player character would build a reputation on the battlefield, win their freedom, then subsequently find motives of their own worthy of the fight. Notably, the ongoing battle fed into the game's never-ending goal, which in turn fueled its live service features. Given the solo play and 4-player co-op hook, Platinum prioritized throwing users into the action as soon as possible. From there, the development team hoped regular content updates would keep players returning for even more. The Hanging Garden community website came online to extend the live service experience by facilitating each player's connection to Babylon's Fall outside the game. Some would later argue these efforts ultimately proved for naught.
Let's see how many of you make it back this time.
Square Enix and PlatinumGames announced their second partnership at the former's E3 2018 video presentation. The project bore a 2019 release window for PC and PS4, but barring these details, the developer and publisher shared precious little about what Babylon's Fall would entail. Even the reveal trailer only teased the bare minimum. It's less than 2-minute runtime cycling through a series of far future dates before pausing at 2 nights duking it out, then transitioning to 4 silhouetted nights standing side by side. In-game action finally sat front and center in the first gameplay trailer showcased during PlayStation's December 2019 State of Play. The over-the-top hack-and-slash combat, mixed with footage of a larger-than-life boss character, left quite the impression on viewers who still knew next to nothing about the adventure, yet eagerly awaited its eventual arrival, which took longer than anticipated. Though initially scheduled for a 2019 rollout, Platinum spent much of the year keeping Babylon's Fall under wraps. Speaking with JP Games, director Kenji Saito admitted the first delay and lack of promotion came down to the team battling unexpected challenges with certain game systems and post-launch arrangements, all new territory for the crew at Platinum. Fitting the studio's hallmark action into a persistent online mold brought its fair share of growing pains too. The addition of a PS5 version and the COVID-19 pandemic's impact on production considerably lengthened the development cycle as well, thus explaining the 2022 due date. But while the limited promo may have allowed for a greater focus on creating the game itself, it also let the public draw uninformed conclusions. As a result, pundits and hopeful players alike walked away from the late 2019 gameplay reveal thinking Babylon's Fall would launch as another of Platinum's single-player adventures. The E3 2021 announcement of live service features was met with surprise and disappointment. Speculation that Square Enix had tacked on the service angle at the last minute took root, yet producer Junichi Ihata maintained the online-only features came baked in at the start. Regardless, the beta sessions that followed E3 2021 indicated Platinum's attempt at breaking into the oversaturated games-as-a-service space had missed the mark.
This is not your time. Your soul is yet unhoned.
Square Enix and Platinum hosted the first closed beta period in the summer of 2021, offering PC users a chance to try out and deliver feedback on Babylon's Fall. An appreciable amount of the beta impressions critiqued the oil painting-inspired visuals. players found the art blurry above all else, an issue that made understanding the on-screen action incredibly difficult. Those with impaired vision complained of feeling strain while playing, sometimes to a degree that proved headache-inducing. Consequently, Platinum toned down the brushwork art, improving legibility while retaining the unique oil painting style. Kenji Saito would later tell JP Games the filter used in the original beta boasted a lower level of polish and prioritized artistic depiction, effectively making the game look better in screenshots and less so in motion. Platinum made the necessary graphical adjustments in time for the third beta test. However, other questions regarding visual details pervaded the online discourse. Most notably, players noticed gear and emote assets that resembled content from Final Fantasy XIV, leading to accusations that Platinum had ripped off the MMORPG. Producer Yosuke Saito explained in a Hanging Garden blog post that Babylon's Fall borrowed data from the Final Fantasy-branded MMO, but only because FF14 director Naoki Yoshida offered the assets freely. Yoshida corroborated as much in a supporting message, noting that while attending an early Babylon's Fall presentation, he recognized the pressure Platinum would be under to deliver a broad selection of gear variations and subsequently extended an opportunity to ease the burden with FF14 assets. Final Fantasy developers supervised subtle design adjustments throughout the process, ensuring the borrowed data complemented the world of Babylon's Fall. No one expected the shared content to become such a hot topic. According to Saito, assistants from the Final Fantasy crew guaranteed Babylon's Fall would receive more gear and emotes on day one than initially planned. Yet the graphics-related concerns merely scratched the surface, especially since gameplay impressions were less than positive during the beta tests. For one, critics and players lamented the laser focus on the tedious grind for gear. Square Enix and Platinum's blatantly obvious investment in retaining users long-term outweighed any investment in fun mechanics and minimal exploration, along with barren dungeons and the absence of puzzles or hidden secrets, ultimately made for an experience that felt bereft of Platinum's signature charm. At the very least, the final beta showed promise that the studio had gone to great lengths to implement improvements across all 3 sessions. But the changes couldn't alleviate fears of Square Enix failing to learn from the pitfalls of Marvel's Avengers. Misgivings about Babylon's Fall continued building throughout the weeks ahead of its March 2022 release. Square Enix's past bad practices with Marvel's Avengers prompted Platinum to clarify its approach to monetization, which included cosmetic-only microtransactions. Similar assurances concerning fair XP distribution and boosters made the rounds during the lead-up to launch as well. Good intentions did not beget a good game, though. Babylon's Fall hit PC, PS4, and PS5 in March 2022, and summarily received widespread critical panning. Bland dungeon crawling, lackluster graphics, and relatively dull combat felt all the more strained beneath the weight of a heavily flawed live service structure. The Metacritic score stalled at an abysmal 41 and 46 on PS5 and PC respectively, engendering speculation about whether Square Enix and Platinum would pull the plug early. Maintaining previously stated comments of supporting Babylon's Fall through a long operating period, the development studio insisted that despite the poor reception, there were no plans to reduce the scale of development. Rather than linger on the Disastrous release, post-launch promotion prepared players for future content, a Season 2 and Season 3 Battle Pass included, along with unspecified plans far beyond those. Incremental updates bolstered the Season 1 content, such as the version 1.1.0 Resurgence chapter that introduced a new faction, Blockade Zone map, increased level cap, and the Gauntlet game mode just weeks after launch. In addition, a Nier Automata event ran from March 29th through April 26th, enticing players with collaborative quests and items. But even Platinum's beloved Nier couldn't endear users and newcomers to the online adventure. The PC user base dropped off considerably in May, with Babylon's Fall entertaining the attention of a mere 77 concurrent players at one point. That same week unleashed another devastating blow when Steam charts data showed a single concurrent user engaged in the action. And still, Platinum persisted, deploying Season 2 offerings on May 31st. The new season, entitled The Light of Aru, added another faction, 80 extra missions, and the pistol weapon type. Despite the massive update, the developer and its publishing partner had to reckon with the dwindling player count, presumably culminating in Season 2's 3-month cycle stretching into a 6-month window while Platinum reassessed its content roadmap. However, instead of yielding more content, the reevaluation of Season 3 and beyond ended with Square Enix deciding to terminate the Babylon's Fall service on February 27, 2023, approximately 12 months after its market debut. All formerly planned, larger-scale updates were canceled as a consequence. A suspension on premium currency sales immediately went into effect. Sales of the digital version and physical copies on retail websites similarly ceased following the termination announcement. The Hanging Garden community site also shut down on February 27th, the last vestiges of the live service fading into obscurity. Although dismal review scores and woefully low player counts likely expedited the demise of Babylon's Fall, Square Enix never explained the service's premature closure. PlatinumGames, for its part, could offer nothing save an apology via a VGC interview, wherein studio CEO Atsushi Inaba said the reasoning behind the decision would need to come from Square Enix. The experience didn't dissuade Platinum from possibly pursuing another persistent online game. On the contrary, the experience taught the story developer a valuable lesson, which manifested as 2 key pillars for future live service endeavors. Inaba noted that, for one, creating fun through core mechanics was a must. Performing the live service in-house would serve as another top priority. Furthermore, he argued these values would need to be treasured by the same people on the same team at the very same company, lest one pillar gain value over another and produce unfavorable results. But Inaba and company didn't want to dwell on the frustration and what-ifs. According to the CEO, pressing on and connecting the Babylon's Fall experience to their efforts moving forward was the only way to let go of the discontent in the long run. The tragedy of Babylon's Fall, then, is that whatever live service Platinum builds next will have been laid on a foundation of broken promises and one publisher's refusal to learn from past mistakes. Thank you for watching. We'd like to take this time to thank, by name, the generous patrons who have pledged to our Hall of Fame reward tier: Alex Moretti, and those currently subscribed to our producer reward tier: Brock Piviroto, Darirap Sigurdsson, GetWrecked.com, Jonathan, Kira May, Landy K. Hayes, Mario Herrera, Milkshake. If you enjoy our content, please consider subscribing to our channel and backing us on Patreon.